I exposed my wife's Las Vegas affair with my HIV-positive business partner, dissolved his partnership, filed for divorce, and reclaimed my life finally. I was at an important Chamber of Commerce event, surrounded by colleagues and peers, and about to receive an award for my contributions to the community. It felt like everything I had worked for over the years was finally paying off. My wife, Rhonda, was right by my side, as she had been for the last 10 years or so. The ceremony was in full swing when she leaned in close to me. At first, I thought she wanted to whisper something supportive or sweet, something a wife would say to her husband during a proud moment. But instead, her words hit me like a freight train. After the ceremony, she said, barely above a whisper, "I'm leaving with Gerald to spend the weekend in Las Vegas." I turned to her, keeping my expression as neutral as I could. The last thing I wanted was to make a scene in front of so many people. "Are you out of your mind?" I asked, trying to keep my voice low. She didn't flinch. Her response was calm, almost cold. "No," she said. "I've made up my mind. It's just something I need to do." Then she added, "I've been feeling him hard through my pants all night, and I'm going to put this on myself as soon as we get to the hotel." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My wife, the woman I had loved and trusted for over a decade, was casually telling me she was about to cheat on me with my business partner. Worse, she wasn't even trying to hide it or justify it. She acted like it was some natural progression of things. "We'll talk when I get back," she said. "If you still feel like you need to, that is." The sheer audacity of her words made my blood boil, but I kept my composure. "If you go through with this, don't bother coming back," I whispered firmly. She just smirked, as if I was the one being unreasonable. Gerald, my so-called friend and business partner, was sitting not far from us. He had this smug, self-satisfied grin on his face, clearly relishing the situation. I glanced at his wife, Jude, who sat beside him looking visibly uncomfortable. She must have known, but what could she do? I didn't have the luxury to comfort her or react. My name was being called. It was time to accept my award. I walked to the podium, shaking hands and smiling for the cameras, but my mind was racing, barely able to focus. I gave my prepared speech, but when it came to the part where I was supposed to thank Rhonda, I skipped her name entirely. She noticed, of course. As soon as I returned to my seat, she made a snide remark about it. I didn't respond. At that moment, I realized she wasn't the woman I thought I had married. When the ceremony ended, I gave her one last chance. "This is it, Rhonda," I told her. "You walk out with him, and you're walking out for good." She laughed, brushing me off as she linked arms with Gerald. "We'll see about that," she said. "I'll call you on Monday. Maybe." I stood there watching them leave together, and all I could think was how utterly surreal it felt. My wife, the person I had built a life with, was walking out on everything we had for a weekend of lust. That's when I made my decision. There would be no coming back from this, for her or for him. The rest of that night was a blur. I stayed at the event long enough to avoid raising suspicion, but my mind was elsewhere. I kept replaying Rhonda's words in my head, trying to understand how things had gotten to this point. We'd had our ups and downs like any couple, but I never thought she'd cross this line, let alone so brazenly. The worst part? She didn't even seem to care. When I got home, I sat down and tried to think clearly. This wasn't just about infidelity, it was about the blatant disrespect. She didn't even try to hide her plans. And Gerald, he was supposed to be my friend and business partner. How long had this been going on? How many times had I ignored signs that now seemed obvious? I spent most of that night staring at the ceiling, but by morning I had a plan. If she was going to throw away everything we'd built, then I needed to protect myself. The first step was to confront her about Gerald's condition. I'd heard from Jude a while back that Gerald was HIV positive. She'd confided in me after she tested positive herself, and she made it clear that Gerald hadn't warned her before their encounter. At the time, I didn't think much of it beyond sympathy for her situation. Now it was different. Rhonda needed to know what she was risking. The next morning I called her. She picked up after a few rings, her voice casual, as if nothing had happened. "What do you want, Ron?" she asked, annoyed. "Rhonda," I said, trying to keep my tone even, "you need to come home. We need to talk. This is serious." She laughed. Actually laughed. "Serious, Ron? I'm in Vegas. I'm about to get in a jacuzzi with Gerald. What could be so important?" I swallowed hard, pushing down the anger rising in my chest. "Do you even know who you're dealing with?" I asked. "Rhonda, Gerald is HIV positive. Jude told me everything. If you go through with this, you're putting your life at risk." Her response was like a slap in the face. "Nice try," she said mockingly. You'd say anything to keep me from doing this. I'm not falling for it. Rhonda, I said, my voice sharper now, I'm not joking. This isn't about us. This is about your health. She cut me off. Look, just enjoy your weekend. Go play golf or something. I'll be back Monday. Maybe we can talk then if you're not still sulking. Then she hung up. I stared at the phone in disbelief. She wouldn't even consider the possibility that I was telling the truth. I felt like I was screaming into a void, and the person I was trying to save couldn't care less. For a moment I thought about calling her again, but I knew it was pointless. She was too far gone. Throughout the weekend she sent me a series of voicemails and texts. They weren't apologies or even explanations. They were taunts. In one message she described how Gerald was so much better than me and how she had never felt this alive. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I forwarded them to my lawyer as evidence. Every word she said only solidified my resolve. By the time Sunday rolled around, I had already come to terms with what I needed to do. Rhonda had crossed a line there was no coming back from, and her refusal to listen to reason only confirmed that she didn't care about the damage she was causing. Not to me, not to herself, not to anyone. I spent the weekend taking steps to make sure she wouldn't have a home to come back to, at least not in the sense she imagined. First, I called my lawyer, Jim Simpson. Ron, I'm sorry to hear about all this, he said after I laid out the situation. Do you want to proceed with divorce papers immediately? Yes, I replied without hesitation, on grounds of adultery, based on the prenup. And I want Gerald out of the business too. Thankfully, we had a clause in our partnership agreement that allowed for dissolution if one partner engaged in behavior that could harm the business. Gerald's actions, both personal and professional, fit that description perfectly. Jim assured me he'd start working on both cases right away, but he reminded me it would take time. I didn't care. As long as the wheels were in motion, that was enough for me. The next morning, I went to the bank. I paid off Rhonda's credit cards and canceled them immediately after. I wasn't about to let her run up more debt under my name while she played house with Gerald. Then I changed the locks on every door in the house. She might still have the keys, but they wouldn't do her any good now. I wasn't worried about losing the house. I bought it years before we got married, and the mortgage was in my name alone. After that, I focused on the rest of her belongings. Every piece of clothing, every shoe, every little trinket she had scattered throughout our home, I stuffed them all into trash bags. I wasn't gentle about it either. I wasn't interested in organizing or folding anything. It all went into the bags, which I then packed into her car. I left just enough room for her to sit and drive. Then I moved the car out of the garage and left it in the driveway where it would be waiting for her return. I wasn't done yet. I took down every photo of us together, every reminder of our life as a couple. The wedding portrait above the fireplace, I smashed it. The broken pieces went into the fireplace, ready to be burned. By the time I finished, the house looked like she had never lived there. That was the goal. On Sunday evening, I called her mother. I always liked her mom. She was kind to me, especially after my own mother passed away. I told her everything. She listened quietly, then sighed. She can stay with me, she said, but I'll teach her a lesson too. She's made a huge mistake, Ron. Thank you, Mom, I said, still calling her that out of habit. She's going to need all the support she can get. I'll do what I can, she replied, her voice heavy with disappointment, but I'm still grounding her, even if she's a grown woman. I couldn't help but laugh at that despite the gravity of the situation. Her comment lightened the mood for a moment. It reminded me of how things used to be, before all of this, when life was simpler and the people in it hadn't yet betrayed me. By the time I finished everything, it felt like I'd been through a battle, but I wasn't broken. If anything, I felt stronger, more focused. Rhonda thought she could destroy me, but I wasn't about to give her that satisfaction. When she came back, she'd find out just how wrong she was. I had been waiting for this moment since the second Rhonda walked out that door. Monday evening came, and sure enough, just as expected, Gerald's car pulled into the driveway around 5:30 p.m. I watched from the window as he dropped her off. He didn't even bother to make eye contact with her. He didn't step out of the car, didn't say goodbye. He just sped off as if he couldn't get away fast enough. I suppose even he wasn't bold enough to face me after what he'd done. Rhonda walked up to the house. Her confident strut had been replaced by something more hesitant. When she reached the door, she pulled out her keys and tried to unlock it, only to find they didn't work. After a few moments of fumbling, she started knocking. Then knocking turned to banging. "Ron," she yelled. "Open the door. This isn't funny." I took my time, let her stew in it for a bit. When I finally opened the door, she stood there with a mix of confusion and frustration. "What the hell is going on?" she demanded. "Why can't I get in? Why is my car out of the garage? And what's all that crap stuffed in it? That crap, I said calmly, is all your stuff. You don't live here anymore, Rhonda. Her face twisted in disbelief. What are you talking about? I told you I'd be back and we could talk. You're overreacting, Ron. Let me in so we can work this out. Work this out? I repeated, my voice rising slightly. You made your choice on Friday night when you walked out that door. There's nothing left to talk about. She pushed past me, but I stepped in front of her, blocking her way. You need to leave, Rhonda, I said firmly. Go to your mother's. She knows what happened and she's expecting you. Her face fell at the mention of her mom. You told her? She asked, her voice trembling. She deserved to know the truth, just like you deserve to face the consequences of your actions. You're blowing this way out of proportion, she snapped. It was one weekend, Ron, one weekend, to teach you a lesson after what you did with Jude. I laughed bitterly. And what exactly did I do with Jude, Rhonda? Have dinner? Talk about our concerns? Gerald took pictures of us at a restaurant and spun them into some wild story, and you bought it without a second thought. Don't lie to me, she hissed. I saw the photos. You saw what you wanted to see, I shot back, and now look where that got you. She was quiet for a moment, then smirked. You're just jealous because Gerald is better than you in every way. You can't handle that I wanted him. Did Gerald tell you he's HIV positive? I asked, cutting straight to the point. Her smirk vanished. Yeah, Rhonda, he's HIV positive. Has been for a while. Jude found out after he infected her. I tried to warn you before. You left, but you wouldn't listen. You're lying, she whispered, but her face had gone pale. Am I? I handed her a copy of Gerald's test results, the ones Jude had given me. Read it. Maybe this will finally make you understand. Her hands shook as she skimmed the paper, and then she looked up at me, her eyes wide with terror. I'm going to get sick, she murmured. I'm going to die. I don't know, I said honestly. You should see a doctor first thing tomorrow and tell them everything. Maybe if they catch it early, they can help. She stumbled out into the yard and vomited into the grass. I stood there watching as the weight of her choices finally hit her. When she turned back to me, tears were streaming down her face. Please, Ron, she sobbed. I don't want a divorce. I was stupid. I was angry. We can fix this, can't we? I shook my head. No, Rhonda, we can't. The marriage is dead, and you're the one who killed it. She dropped to her knees, crying so hard I thought she might collapse. But I didn't feel pity. I didn't feel anger. I felt nothing. I had warned her. She chose not to listen. Now all I could do was watch her face the consequences. Tuesday morning, I walked into my office earlier than usual. There was a tension in the air, as if everyone could feel that something monumental was about to happen. Gerald had no idea what was waiting for him. I had already prepared everything, the legal documents to dissolve our partnership, the security team briefed on their role, and the clause in our agreement highlighted and ready to present. It was time for Gerald to face the fallout. He strolled in around 9 a.m., wearing that smug grin he always had, as if he owned the place. That grin didn't last long. As soon as he stepped inside, the security team intercepted him. I had given them strict instructions: confiscate his badge, ensure he didn't touch any company property, and escort him out once he packed his things. The moment he saw the guards, confusion flashed across his face, quickly replaced by irritation. What's this about, Ron? He asked as he entered my office, his voice tinged with annoyance but not yet panic. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. Sit down, Gerald. We need to talk. He hesitated but complied, though his usual bravado was still evident in his posture. Is this about Rhonda? He asked, leaning back like he had all the time in the world. You're really going to throw away our partnership over a woman? Partly, I said, keeping my tone calm. But mostly it's about your behavior, your reckless, unethical, and frankly illegal behavior. You knew you were HIV positive, Gerald. You knew, and yet you deliberately chose to expose not only Jude but my wife to the virus without informing them. His face paled slightly, but he tried to play it off with a smirk. You don't know what you're talking about. Oh, but I do, I replied, sliding a copy of his test results across the desk. Jude gave me these. She found out after you infected her, and guess what? She told me everything. His eyes darted to the paper, and for the first time I saw real fear flicker across his face. You have no proof I infected anyone, he stammered. Save it, I interrupted. I also have the recording from our conversation at the event last week. You made it clear you planned this entire mess. I'm done with you, Gerald. The partnership is over. I handed him a copy of the dissolution papers. pointing to the clause that allowed me to sever ties for morally unacceptable behavior. You violated the terms of our agreement. As of today, you no longer have any claim to this company. Gerald's smirk disappeared entirely. You can't do this, he said, his voice rising. I'll fight you in court. I'll drag your name through the mud. People will hear about this. Go ahead, I said, pressing a button on the small recorder on my desk. His threats played back word for word, along with his admission of knowingly exposing Rhonda to HIV. The security guards standing by the door crossed their arms, silently acknowledging the weight of the evidence. I'm not just kicking you out of the company, I continued. I'm handing all of this over to the authorities. Deliberately exposing someone to HIV without informing them. That's a felony in this state, Gerald. You're looking at up to 20 years in prison. He sat there stunned, his usual arrogance replaced by a look of complete defeat. Ron, come on, he finally muttered. We were friends, business partners. You don't have to do this. You stopped being my friend the moment you betrayed me, I said coldly. Now you're just a liability. Gerald's exit was anything but graceful. The security team escorted him to his office, watching as he packed his belongings under their supervision. He tried to make small talk with them, but no one engaged. When he finally left the building, the tension lifted, replaced by a quiet sense of relief. The staff knew something big had happened, but I kept the details vague. The partnership is dissolved, I told them in a meeting later that day. Gerald will no longer be with the company. This will not affect your jobs, and I'll be taking over operations. That same week, the legal system caught up to him. Jude, armed with her own evidence, testified to his actions, and Rhonda added her statement to the case. The authorities didn't hesitate to act. Gerald was arrested at a motel where he had been staying since Jude kicked him out. The trial that followed was a circus, but the outcome was clear from the start. The prosecutor painted Gerald as a reckless manipulator, and the evidence supported every word. It didn't take long for the jury to convict him. The judge handed down the maximum sentence, 20 years in state prison. Justice had been served, and Gerald's downfall was complete. But for me, it wasn't about revenge. It was about closure, about drawing a line under the betrayal and ensuring neither he nor Rhonda could hurt anyone else the way they had hurt me. The months after everything unraveled were a mix of chaos and quiet. On the one hand, I was swamped with work. Dissolving the partnership meant I had to reorganize the company, handle the fallout with clients, and ensure the staff stayed motivated during the transition. On the other hand, my personal life became eerily still. After years of being married and constantly thinking about someone else, suddenly being alone felt strange, but I needed that time to process everything, to rebuild not just my life but myself. The divorce from Rhonda was finalized without much fuss. Once she realized I was serious and there was no going back, she stopped bombarding me with messages. Jim handled everything with efficiency. I made sure the settlement followed the terms of the prenup. She walked away with nothing more than what she had brought into the marriage. I heard from her mother that she'd started antiretroviral therapy and was trying to piece her life back together, but we never spoke directly again. I didn't need closure from her. I'd already closed that door myself. As for Gerald, his problems snowballed quickly. With the legal case against him moving forward and his prison sentence looming, he had no time to regroup. Jude finalized her divorce and sold her home, moving out of state for a fresh start. Part of me was glad for her. She'd been another victim in this mess, and I hoped she could find peace somewhere far away from the wreckage Gerald had left behind. For a while I thought I'd never move on. Trust felt like an impossible concept. I kept busy with work and avoided anything that resembled a social life. Friends tried to set me up with dates, but I wasn't interested. It wasn't bitterness, just exhaustion. The idea of opening myself up to someone new felt like a risk I wasn't ready to take. That changed about a year and a half later. Denise, my secretary, invited me to a company event and introduced me to her younger sister, Angela. She was a few years younger than me and had recently gone through a rough divorce herself. Her ex-husband had left her for another woman, and she carried the same kind of guarded demeanor I had. At first, we were just two people with shared scars making polite conversation, but something clicked. Angela was different. She didn't push or pry. We started spending time together, slowly at first, a coffee here, a dinner there. We were both cautious, careful not to rush into anything. Trust wasn't easy for either of us, but as the months passed, it grew. She understood my hesitations because she had them too, and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe again. A few months after we started dating, I proposed. It wasn't some grand gesture, just a quiet moment between us that felt right. She said yes, and now we're planning a spring wedding followed by a cruise in the Caribbean. For the first time in what feels like forever, I'm looking forward to the future instead of dreading it. When I think back to everything that happened with Rhonda and Gerald, it still stings. I don't think that kind of betrayal ever fully leaves you, but Angela has helped me see that it doesn't have to define me. Life isn't about the people who hurt you. It's about the people who help you heal. As we plan our wedding, I've invited Rhonda's mother. She was always good to me, and I felt it was the right thing to do. Whether she comes or not, I'm okay with it. I've learned to let go of the things I can't control. Angela and I both carry the scars of our past, but together we found a way to move forward, and that, to me, is what matters most. Looking back on it all now, 2 years after the dust finally settled, I'm sitting on the balcony of the house that used to feel like a museum of a failed marriage and now feels like the first real home I've ever had. Angela is inside humming while she finishes dinner, and the sound of it still catches me off guard sometimes. How peaceful ordinary life can be when the people in it aren't quietly sharpening knives behind your back. People expect me to say I'm angry. They wait for the bitterness, the "I'll never trust again" speech. The truth is quieter than that. I'm not angry some days, yes, but mostly I'm stunned at how much lighter I feel without the constant, invisible weight of being taken for granted. For over 10 years I carried a marriage the way you carry an overdressed child who refuses to walk, smiling, adjusting the load, pretending it wasn't crushing me. I told myself that providing everything meant I was loved. Turns out it only meant I was useful. The night Rhonda whispered her plans in my ear at the awards dinner, something inside me didn't break. It clicked into place. I felt the exact moment the story I'd been telling myself, if I'm good enough, she'll never leave, turned to ash. And in that same second I felt something else. Relief. Not joy, not yet, but the unmistakable loosening of a knot I hadn't even realized was strangling me. I walked to that podium with a clearer head than I'd had in years, because for the first time I wasn't performing for anyone. I was just me. Watching Rhonda's life implode wasn't satisfying the way revenge movies make you think it will be. It was sad, almost clinical. The woman who once rolled her eyes at budgets suddenly couldn't afford groceries. The woman who bragged about finally feeling alive spent weeks terrified she was going to die because she'd trusted a predator's smile over her husband's warning. I didn't gloat. I just watched the consequences arrive exactly on schedule, the way a farmer watches rain he predicted finally fall on the fields he refused to abandon. There's no triumph in being right when the cost is someone you once loved reduced to a shaking, vomiting stranger on your front lawn. Gerald's downfall was louder, more public, and honestly easier to witness. Stripping him of the company we built together felt like pulling a splinter that had been festering for years. 20 years in a cage is a long time to think about the difference between charm and character. I hope he uses it well. But the part no one sees, the part I still turn over in my mind on quiet nights, is how close I came to losing myself completely in that marriage. I almost became the caricature Rhonda painted. Controlling, small, jealous, unworthy. There were moments I believed her. Moments I apologized for things I hadn't done just to keep the peace. The real victory wasn't the new locks, or the canceled credit cards, or even Gerald's prison sentence. The victory was the morning I woke up and realized I no longer needed her approval to feel like a man. Meeting Angela didn't save me. I was already saved the day I chose my dignity over my desperation. She simply showed me that trust can grow again when it's planted in honest soil. We talk about everything, our exes, our fears, the nights we both cried in empty houses. There's no performance between us, no silent scorecard. When she leans her head on my shoulder, I don't hear the old whisper asking, "What do I have to do next to keep this?" I just feel the warmth of someone who chooses to be here because she wants to, not because I paid the mortgage. Some evenings I still catch myself staring at the spot on the wall where the wedding portrait used to hang. The faint outline is gone now, painted over, but I can still see it in my mind. I don't feel hatred when I think of Rhonda anymore. I feel something closer to pity, the way you pity a gambler who finally realizes the house always wins, but only after the last chip is gone. I hope the medication works. I hope she learns whatever lesson the universe is trying to teach her, but I no longer carry her lesson for her. I kept one thing from that old life. Rhonda's mother is coming to the wedding. She hugged me the day the divorce was final and whispered, "You were the best thing that ever happened to my daughter." She just didn't have the eyes to see it. I think about that sentence sometimes when self-doubt creeps in. I was enough. I always was. I just gave my enough to someone who couldn't count. So here I am, 40-something, starting over, and it doesn't feel like starting over. It feels like starting, period. The first honest chapter of a life that finally belongs to me. The scars are still there. They catch the light sometimes when I'm getting dressed. But they don't hurt anymore. They just remind me that I survived the fire and came out able to feel warmth again. If I could go back to that awards dinner and whisper one thing in my own ear, it wouldn't be a warning about Rhonda or Gerald. It would be this: you are not the money you make, the house you buy, or the forgiveness you keep handing out like coupons. You are the boundary you finally draw, the door you finally lock, the quiet morning you wake up and realize peace isn't something you earn from someone else. It's something you give yourself when you stop begging to be chosen. I chose me. And for the first time in my life, it was more than enough.